And this is what he said. I feel very strongly that we are in the midst of a Bretton Woods realignment coming in terms of global policy and global trade. So what does a major realignment, Bretton Woods-like realignment mean? Wednesday, November 27th, 2024, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So I've been talking about the Bretton Woods system, the Bretton Woods agreement on this channel for many years. I even have a playlist, and you can go through my playlist if you want to learn more about it. But it's interesting that yesterday I spoke about the new nominee for Treasury Secretary, and I was scrolling through X yesterday, and someone found an interview that he did with a YouTube channel called Capital Allocators with Ted Sides. I'm not sure that's how you pronounce it. He did this interview with Scott Bessent, it says here, about 3 weeks ago. And I went through it. And it looks like the Trump administration might call for a new Bretton Woods agreement, which I find very interesting. And this is what Scott Bessent talks about, and we're going to go through what he said here that I think is very pertinent to what we look at in this channel in terms of sound money, gold, and geopolitics. Before I do, though, just wanted to give a shout out to my precious metals dealers affiliates. In the US, of course, we work closely with Miles Franklin, and you can get in touch with them. All the details are below in the description, and mention Mario or Monaco 64, and they'll help you in any way they can if it's the first time that you're buying gold and silver. Here in the UK, of course, we're affiliated with Gold Investments. All the details as well below in the description. And Oliver and Simon Temple will make sure they will help you if it's the first time, or if you need some more advice on how to buy gold and silver. You can call them, or if you don't, you can just go straight to their website, and I've got a few promo codes as well. So yesterday I spoke about the new presumptive U.S. Secretary of the Treasury. That's his position right now, actually, because he needs to be approved by the Senate eventually. And I said that I thought it was going to be really hard for the U.S. To get out of this debt trap, or as actually he calls it, the debt burden. And I still think it's going to be very hard. Unfortunately, from reading history, I think it's almost impossible and mathematically impossible to do so. But we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt, of course. And I said that yesterday. So one of the interesting things he said is this: we are in a long-term bull market in gold. And he said that's why it's my biggest position. So he is bullish gold. One of the things that he said, though, before he said we're in a long-term bull market for gold, is that Xi Jinping, president of China, is a Leninist, and he won't follow or allow a free market mechanism to make the Chinese economy sustainable. And he said that's the reason why we're in a bull market in gold. I'm not sure what he meant there. I personally think we're in a bull market in gold because central banks around the world, especially the Fed, ECB, Bank of England, Bank of Japan, they've been printing money left, right, and center. Our governments have been borrowing, hence the debt burden. And our governments have been getting too big. And the only way out, one of the way outs of this debt burden, of course, is growth, like he says. But it's easier said than done. The other way is to inflate your debt away. And one of the ways you do that, and it's been done in the past, is to debase the currency. And a rising gold price, of course, is currency debasement, even though since 1971, the Bretton Woods system actually has been suspended. Because if you listen to President Nixon on August 15th, he didn't say he was closing down the whole system, the Bretton Woods Agreement from 1944. He said he was just suspending it temporarily by not allowing other countries to convert their dollar currency reserves into gold. It was temporarily suspended. So technically, we're still under the Bretton Woods system. One thing he said as well is that central banks are accumulating a lot of gold reserves, and this is what we've been saying here on the channel. We've been covering it on the channel. I spoke about Poland, how they've bought the most gold this year, and he said that he was surprised that the Central Bank of Poland wants to increase their reserves of gold up to 20%. Yes, and he said he follows gold and the central bank accumulation of gold reserves very closely because it's his biggest position. So let's go back to the growth part and how he plans to hopefully get the U.S. going again and manage this huge debt burden. And it is a big debt burden, and it has been done in the past. After World War II, they managed to grow out of the debt, but things are very different. But anyway, he goes on to say that he's usually not involved in politics, but this time he thought he was going to get from behind his desk, so to speak, to get involved. And this, of course, was before the election. And he said, I want to be involved, whether I'm in the administration or outside the administration. So, and he said that the election was a choice between growth and managing the debt burden or not, right? If Harris had won. Said he thinks the U.S. can grow out of the debt burden or the debt bubble, if you want to call it, or this debt trap. Well, he thinks it can be done through deregulation, energy independence and dominance, and a growth mindset. And he says another interesting thing he says is that this is the last chance for the U.S. to grow out of this debt burden. And what does he mean by that? Well, I think he means that we're very close to some kind of event, and if we don't change quickly, things will get out of hand. Could he be right? Could he be wrong? Well, we'll have to wait and see. Time will tell. I personally lean towards it being a little bit too late, but you never know. So here's the interesting part, because the post on X, the guy who posted it said, well, this guy's long gold, but didn't mention the part about Bretton Woods. And this is what he said. I feel very strongly that we are in the midst of a Bretton Woods realignment coming in terms of global policy and global trade. So what does a major realignment, Bretton Woods-like realignment mean? Well, it means we're going to have some kind of new monetary architecture for the world. And if you've listened to me for many years, I've spoken about the fact that John Exter, who worked for the New York Fed back in the 60s, I think, he wrote, of course, about the inverted Exter pyramid of liquidity. He said that after 1971, when Nixon suspended the Bretton Woods system, we had a non-system because other countries could not redeem U.S. currency or debt for real money. And that's what basically gold does. It's a mechanism to allow for payment of the debt. And is it any wonder that we have this debt burden that Scott Bessent talks about? Well, it started growing from 1971 because there's no anchor to the debt. And of course, it's been very easy for the U.S. to borrow, print, spend, and import things with currency and credit created out of thin air. So I find it interesting that he says there has to be a global realignment. But I think, unfortunately, the country that has created this problem and the necessity for a Bretton Woods-like realignment is the United States. And he doesn't really mention BRICS too much, but I think what the Trump administration is thinking, especially through the new Treasury Secretary, or the presumptive Treasury Secretary, is that the United States is going to have to sit down with the major countries like China, Russia, Europe, the European countries, and work things out and bring back some sanity to the monetary architecture of the world. And I think the Trump administration and Scott Bessent, they're aware that BRICS are trying to form an alternative because the whole system right now is broken. He doesn't talk about that. Of course, that's my opinion of things. And gold, you always need a lot of gold if you're going to sit at the table of a new conference to draw up a system for global trade, global investment, global payments amongst nations. If you don't have the gold, you're not going to be sitting at the table. But it's interesting that he talks about a new Bretton Woods realignment. And I did a little bit of calculation yesterday, and you might find this interesting. I think I've spoken about this before. If you look at Switzerland, they were on a de facto gold standard, really, up until the year 2000, or one could argue until 1992, because in 1992 they joined the IMF, which was a really stupid thing for them to do, in my opinion, because the IMF doesn't allow member countries to peg their currency to gold. But at the time anyway, they had their banknotes, or M1, 40% covered by gold. By the year 2000, they dropped that to 20%. But you might as well say they're not in the gold standard anymore, because the IMF doesn't allow countries to peg their currency to gold. It was just the US that was supposed to do it. But of course, Richard Nixon ended that system temporarily, or suspended it. The US actually, dollar is still pegged at $42.22 technically. That was done in 1973, a statutory price that was brought through in Congress. But if you look at Switzerland and how they peg their currency 40%, and you look at M1 now in the US, and you do the calculations, I get a number of around $28,000. That would be 40% backed for M1. Am I saying we're going there? No, but I think it's one of the reasons why Scott Bessent thinks we're in a long-term bull market. Well, I've thought that as well. I've been bullish gold and bearish fiat currencies since 2002, and I continue to be. So there you go. I hope this has helped. And yeah, now we just have to sit and wait. And let's quickly look at the markets then this morning. It's 8:22 a.m. London time. We've got spot gold at 26.47. That's up 14 bucks. The high's been 26.49 and the low 26.26. So we're up about 0.5%. Silver is up 15 cents at 30.59. It's been as high as 71 and as low as 30.25. Stock market is down slightly. Not much though. Not much to write home about. Of course, it's going to be a quiet session today. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving in the U.S. And with that as well, I'd like to wish my viewers in the U.S. a happy Thanksgiving. And what about the currencies? Well, the pound is up slightly here, up about 0.33%, just above 126. And the euro as well is up about 0.4 at 105.32. The dollar actually is down substantially versus the yen. It's down 1% at 151.57. What about crude oil? Well, WTI crude is up 0.4, trading at 69 bucks. And U.S. Treasury 10-year yield is down 3 basis points, around 4.27. What about in the UK? What's the gilt market doing? Well, the 10-year gilt yield has actually been able to hold below 4.5. We're now at 4.37, which to me is kind of surprising. But central banks and treasuries can always manipulate things temporarily. But I think the trend for gilt yields is higher because our economy is, I mean, it hasn't been well managed for, I would argue, a couple of decades. But what the new government is doing is even worse. So I think, yeah, a 4.37 yield on the 10-year gilt is not something I'd like, I would accept as payment to lend to the government. And that, of course, is not something I want to do, to lend to governments. Not even Scott Bessent. He's long gold as his biggest position, not U.S. Treasury. So there you go. With that, I'm going to wish you all a very good day. And again, to my viewers in the U.S., a happy Thanksgiving. And I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.